So, the message to my, the title to my message is called The Healer's Response. And when I was looking through the Word, and there's so many wonderful miracles that Jesus performed while he was here on earth, and I started looking through all of them. Right away, I knew which one I wanted to share on, but then the Lord started to show me something different. And so he started to show me how he responded in every different aspect of every healing that he made while he was here on earth. And here are a few that I got. When he responded to the leopard man, he told him, "I am willing, and be healed." And he was healed. And then when he spoke to the widow's dead son, he saw her and knew that she was on her way to bury her son, her only son, and knew that she was a widow. And he was moved by compassion. And he told her, he went up to the coffin, and then he told his son, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And he arose and began to walk. Then he went along and he spoke to the 18-year-old crippled woman that was crippled by a spirit. And he spoke to her and responded to her and said, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." And immediately she straightened up and praised God. Then he speaks to the two blind men when they call out to him, "Son of David, have mercy on us." He says to them, "Do you believe you can see?" And they said, "Yes, Lord, we do. Because of your faith, it will happen." And their eyes were opened. And today I just want to highlight two different stories. These were just some of the ways God spoke to his people and how he responded to them. But in every aspect, he did it in a different way. And I love that it reveals that, because it just shows that every single situation was different, but he had something to say to them. And he was either moved by compassion or he was moved by their faith. And he responded in a way and healed them. And this story I want to share on is one of the ways that he responded to faith. And we all know this story. If you don't know, I know the scripture will be behind me. And this is a story where Jesus heals the woman with the issue of blood. And this woman had been suffering for 12 years. And she had been under the care of many doctors and spent all she had and was not getting better but getting worse. And as she saw Jesus, she thought to herself, if only I can just touch him, I can be healed. And immediately when she touched him, she was made well. And then Jesus says, "Who touched me?" He felt power released from him. And then the disciples tell him, "How do you say that? How could you say that? There's so many people around you. There's so many people touching you. How could you say that?" And I'm just paraphrasing, the scriptures behind me, okay? And then she was frightened, but she went before him and told him, "It was me." And he responds by telling her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." She touched him by faith, and her faith healed her. And right now I want to share a story of when I was in 2017, I had started having some pain in my jaw, and it started really small right here, and then throughout the time, it started progressing and getting more painful. Started getting to the point where it would go down my neck, and then it started traveling to my shoulder, and it got to the point where I couldn't even open my mouth. And I was only able to open it a little bit. And this pain, by the time I let it get this bad, because no one likes to go to the doctors. And so by the time I decided, okay, I can't, this is getting bad, I need to do something. I went to the doctor, and the doctor tells me, oh, well, this is considered oral, so I have to now send you to the dentist. So then I go to the dentist, and now the dentist says, oh, this is for a specialist. Now I had to go see the specialist. So by the time I saw the specialist, had been like a year. And then when I saw the specialist, they did their x-rays. And when they did their x-rays, he had told me that I had TMJ, and it was something had to do with my joints, that they were out of place. So he recommended, which was considered to be the first step, to get a procedure that was called anthrocentesis. And the procedure was they were gonna do some kind of surgery behind my ear and try to irrigate it with water to try to get it to go back to where it was supposed to be. And he tells me that this procedure was not a guarantee. It would be the first step before if it doesn't work, then we would go to the next step, which would be surgery. So because it was considered oral care, my insurance didn't cover it. So he tells me the amount, and then he says, and I tell him, okay, well, I'm gonna have to save. At that time I was a single mom on a fixed budget. I had to save. So I began to save, and then when I was getting close to having the whole amount to be able to do my surgery, I want to say that was like another 7 months later. The Lord pressed upon my heart. At that time, it was already 2019 by then. This was 2 years later when I started having pain. And pressed upon my heart to give towards the occupancy pledge. And I'll give your money that you've been saving. And I was like, oh my God, I had been in so much pain for 2 years, I couldn't even open my mouth. And I was like, okay, God, if this is what you want, then I'm gonna trust you, because I know you're gonna do a miracle. You know my situation, you know I've been suffering from this pain. And as soon as I gave the finances, I released it, and I didn't think about it no more, and I continued on. I says, either you're gonna provide somehow, or you're gonna do a miraculous healing in my jaw. And 7 months later, we went to the Legacy Nights as a church on the road church. And that night, Christine Kane spoke, but after she spoke, Pastor Julian Lowe went up, and he started praying, and God started moving. The presence of God was there, and he just started calling out people for different areas. And one of the areas that he said, someone here has jaw pain. And immediately when he said that, I raised my hand so high, and I put my other hand on my jaw, and I said, this one is mine. I was like, this is mine, this is my healing. And then you see everybody raising their hand. I was way at the back, and I was like, I don't care where I'm at, he don't need to touch me, he don't nothing. I just know this is mine. And immediately when we were praying, I felt that I can open my mouth and I can move my jaw. I was so blown away. Literally, I was like moving my jaw. I was like, what? I can move it. I can open my mouth. I'm like, man. And even I was just in awe of what God had done. You know when he does something for you and you're like, did you really do it? The next day, I was like, can I still move it? I was like, man, God, he healed me. He healed me from my pain, from my suffering. And I'm just so grateful because the doctors offered me a possible solution. But God gave me an ultimate healing. And he healed me. I can't even imagine the woman with the issue of blood, 12 years, spent everything she had. It's like, man, it's like there's no other way but to just believe in faith, believing God for a miracle. And then he moves. He responded to faith. The next point of this message is when he responds to compassion, with compassion. And this story here is completely contrast to what the story that I'm going to share before. And this is the one that I was struggling with, but I really felt God wanted me to share this tonight. And this story here in John 5:1-9, it says, Jesus heals a lame man. And I'm going to read this. It says, afterwards, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city near the sheep gate was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, and paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, would you like to be well? And he responds by saying, I can't, sir. The sick man said, for I have no one to put me in the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else gets in there ahead of me. Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed. He rolled up his sleeping mat and began walking. God saw his condition. That's what I love about him. Because no matter what you go through in life, no matter where you're at in life, he shows up and he meets you where you're at. Why would God ask him? Why would he ask him, would you like to get well? And I felt like he was asking him because he wanted to awaken his faith. And even though when he responded, I can't, I could just feel the weariness in his soul for 38 years, time after time, not receiving a healing. He had nothing in him to say yes. He said, I couldn't. But God responded with compassion and healed him. And a few years ago, well, actually, when we went through this transition and we went through the journey, I was at a state, first trauma, and then a state of adrenaline, and a state of survival. And during that season of all those years, I was experienced trauma. I lost Judy, my daughter. We went through a traumatic experience. The enemy took the wind out of me. And then towards that time, my sister passed away. And so when I went through those experiences, because I was in adrenaline and I was in just survival mode, I didn't allow myself to feel. And then because being that single mom, that person that just wants to make it, it's like I went on my own strength. And I allowed, during that time, I got into a place where my grief turned into sorrow, and then my sorrow turned into depression, and then my depression turned into anxiety, and then my anxiety turned into fear. Being up here today, it's like I'm breaking that fear. And this year, when they said the year shift, I said, fear be gone. Fear be gone. And I share this story because I want to expose the enemy for who he is, but highlight who our God is, the compassionate God that he is. And it got so bad that when I went to school one day, I literally couldn't get out of my car, and I had a panic attack. And my heart felt like it was going to explode. And I couldn't get out of my car. I couldn't take on anymore. And I had to let go of my school because it was too much, the pressure. And that's what the enemy does. He's scared of who you are and what you're going to do for God. But God is so good, so good. And the enemy, one thing about the enemy is that he can't snatch your eternal security. We have been bought by the blood of the Lamb. We are going to heaven. He can't take that, but you know what he does? He comes and he'll do whatever he can to disrupt your peace and rob you of your eternal reward. And that hit me so hard because my reward is the people that God has called me to speak to, the people, my family, the reward that we have is the fruit that we're going to produce. You see, God has called each and every single person to abide in him. And as we abide in him, he will abide in us and we will produce fruit. And we won't produce fruit if the enemy robs us of our peace. But I have good news today because my Bible says that the God of peace will crush Satan under your feet. And today we're going to put him where he belongs. You see, this girl, 3 years ago was full of faith, believed God for a miracle and got her healing. She never thought she was going to be in a place where she couldn't even get out of her car, full of anxiety, fear, and depression. But the Lord, my God, full of compassion, full of love and mercy and joy, he responds. And he tells me, my daughter, do you want to be well? You see, the God who healed me when I was full of faith was the same God who came down to me when I wasn't. He's so faithful. Wherever you find yourself today, God is here to meet you. He wants you to know that wherever you're at in your life, whether it's a mustard size faith or whether you just don't have it in you, he wants to heal you tonight. The same way that he healed people in the days of old, he wants to do today. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever.